Let's turn our attention to Libya then, where the new rulers there formally declared the liberation of the country from more than 40 years of rule by Colonel Gaddafi yesterday. Thousands gathered for the liberation ceremony in the eastern city of Benghazi, where the uprising against Colonel Gaddafi's rule first began. So, what next for Libya then, following the death of the dictator who ruled the country for 42 years? Nabila Ramdani is a journalist and expert in Middle Eastern and North African politics. Nabila, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Big challenges lie ahead for Libya. What would you pick out as the main ones?
Well, very much so, and I think with now coalition forces ready to withdraw their military might, the focus will very much be on the National Transitional Council's ability to reconcile rival factions and getting them to operate in the national interest. They work quite effectively as a military force to remove Gaddafi. Now, the question will be if they will be able to work together as peaceful political colleagues, and there will be numerous conflicting interests to reconcile. Let's not forget that during the conflict people were fighting on the same side, fighting against Gaddafi, were already vying for power and control of oil revenue. And now the country is very much awash with weapons and pumped up victorious young men, and they will all want a stake in the new Libya. And as US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said, the number one priority now will be to disarm the rival factions, and this will prove extremely challenging.
And what about elections? Because we've been promised elections pretty swiftly by the National Transitional Council. Do you foresee that the kind of timetable they're talking about is possible?
Indeed, the National Transitional Council announced elections in the next 8 months. We're talking about a country with no history of political dissidence, let alone political structures. So again, this is going to prove extremely challenging. We're already seeing how the NTC is struggling to establish its authority over the country. The very fact, for example, that the Misrata Brigade has declared unilaterally that Gaddafi's body belongs to them, and it's on display in a gruesome way in a shopping mall in Misrata, says it all, frankly.
On that point, some concern expressed internationally about the circumstances of Colonel Gaddafi's death. Do you think that those calls for an investigation are likely to go anywhere, or will those protests simply fade away?
I think the vast majority of the Libyan people doesn't seem to have a problem with the way Gaddafi died at all. But I do think it would have been a far better start for a new Libya if he could have been tried properly and if he'd been made to answer numerous unanswered questions about what went on under his regime. Having said that, his death took place in the context of a savage civil war, and it was almost inevitable that he was going to end up that way. But it also means that the rebel forces effectively failed the first test of democracy by ignoring due process and the rule of law.
Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. Nabila Ramdani there, an expert in Middle Eastern and North African politics.